Chapter 17 Beyond Redemption. Dakan paces the temple angrily as the guardsmen deliver their report of the raid against the city's resistance fighters, being stamped out once and for all. Each and every citizen who stood against the priesthood and the serpent has been killed. Everyone minus 2. The head priest's fury is palpable as he paces the temple, his footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. He listens with growing impatience as the guardsmen deliver their report, their voices trembling slightly as they recount the details of the ruthless raid against the city's resistance fighters. The head priest's face twists in disgust as he hears that every last citizen who dared oppose to the priesthood and the serpent has been mercilessly slain. The air in the room is thick with tension as the head priest's eyes blaze with anger, and he clenches his fist so tightly that his knuckles turn white. Suddenly he stops pacing and turns to face the guardsman, his voice seething with contempt. "Everyone, you say? Everyone except for 2. Who are these 2 rebels who have dared to defy us? You are positive that they were not among those present at the raid?" Dakan asks, hoping for a different answer. The guards cower in fear of the powerful holy man. "Neither Enkidu nor his female companion were found. Others report seeing them back here in the city last night, while the raid was being conducted. Many of our guards have not reported in from their patrols yet. It's likely that they ran into that man and were killed." "Find them and bring them to me at once. They are but one man and a whore," Dakan shouts, striking the guard across the face. "How can every sword of Darka fail to bring him to justice?" The guardsmen bow their heads in submission and quickly make their way out of the temple to carry out the head priest's orders. Dakan, now alone in the temple, takes a deep breath and closes his eyes. His mind races with thoughts of the 2 rebels who have managed to elude his grasp. He cannot let them go unpunished. They represent a threat to his power and the stability of the city. He begins to pace again, his thoughts consumed with the task of finding the rebels. Suddenly, a sound catches his attention. He turns towards the source of the noise and sees a faint light coming from the shadows. His heart races as he realizes that the rebels have somehow managed to infiltrate the temple. He reaches for his weapon, ready to confront them. As the head priest reaches for his weapon, a sudden movement catches his eye. He turns just in time to see a massive serpentine form coiling itself around one of the temple's columns. The head priest freezes in terror as he realizes what he's seeing. The serpent itself has come out to confront him. The serpent's massive form is truly awe-inspiring, even for someone as powerful as the head priest. Its body is thicker than a man's waist, and its length stretches well over 30 feet. The creature's scales gleam like polished obsidian, each one reflecting the dim light of the temple. Its eyes are a piercing yellow, narrow, and slitted like a cat's. They seem to glow with an inner fire. The head priest can see that the serpent is a formidable predator, built for strength and speed. Its muscular body ripples with power as it moves, each coil and twist sending shock waves through the air. Its head is long but blunt at the end, filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth that glisten in the dim light. As the head priest watches, he realizes that the serpent resembles nothing he's seen before, except perhaps in ancient texts and illustrations. It reminds him of legends of the Nabaku, a massive snake that is said to have once roamed the earth millions of years ago. The Nabaku had no predators and devoured all who lived within its domain, whether they be crocodiles or elephants. Size did not matter to the Nabaku. If it had flesh and blood, it was its prey. It was a top-level hunter, feared as a god. Like the Nabaku, the serpent seems to exude a sense of primordial power and danger. Dakan wonders if Nyarlathotep himself is descended from the Nabaku, or if those massive creatures were spawned from him as their progenitor. Surely his great god could not have descended from a mere animal. No, Nyarlathotep was the first of his kind. All of the other great serpents must have been created by him in his likeness. The head priest vows that he will return the world to the way it rightfully should be. All of the world will once again fear and worship the great serpent. Dakin cannot help but feel a sense of both awe and fear as he gazes upon the serpent's immense form. He knows that this creature represents a force beyond his understanding, a symbol of the primal forces that govern the world. As the serpent slithers away, the head priest can't help but wonder what other secrets and terrors lurk in the shadows beyond his grasp. The creature's scales shimmer in the dim light, its eyes locked onto the head priest's. For a moment, neither moves, as if in a silent standoff. The head priest's mind races, unsure of what to do next. The serpent is a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of power and control in the city. And yet, it has never been known to venture into the temple itself. What could this mean? As if sensing the head priest's thoughts, the serpent uncoils itself and begins to move towards him. Its movements are slow and deliberate, almost hypnotic, and the head priest finds himself unable to look away. The creature's mouth opens wide, revealing razor-sharp teeth, and the head priest realizes with a sinking feeling that he is about to be consumed. But just as the serpent reaches him, it stops. Its head hovers inches away from the head priest's face, and for a moment they stare at each other in silence. Then, the serpent speaks. "Head priest," it hisses, "you have overstepped your bounds. You have allowed your ego and your thirst for power to cloud your judgment. You have destroyed those who would dare to question you, and in doing so, you have invited destruction upon yourself." The head priest trembles with fear and shame as the serpent continues to speak. He knows that the creature speaks the truth. He has become too consumed with his own ambition, too blinded by his own power to see the damage he has wrought upon the city. The serpent turns to leave, but before it does, it speaks one final warning. "Your time is running out, head priest. You must make amends for your actions, or face the consequences." And with that, it slithers away, leaving the head priest alone in the temple, consumed by his thoughts and his guilt. The head priest remains frozen in place, his mind racing with thoughts and emotions that he cannot fully comprehend. He knows that the serpent's warning was a serious one, and he understands that he must make amends for his actions before it's too late. But if he is also filled with a sense of deep unease, wondering what other threats may be looming on the horizon. For a long moment he stands there in silence, staring out in the darkness of the temple. Finally, he takes a deep breath and turns to leave, his mind filled with a sense of urgency and purpose. He knows that he has much work to do if he is to redeem himself and save his city from the brink of destruction. All was going perfectly for both him and Dwarka until that man Enkidu came to the city. None of the resistance fighters dared openly defy the priesthood before. Once Enkidu and his horde challenged their authority, everything began to slip out of his control. But he is determined to make things right. He knows that it won't be easy, and that there will be many obstacles along the way. But he is ready to face whatever challenges come his way, knowing that he has been given a second chance to make things right. If he can just eliminate Enkidu and his horde, the rebellion will be ended. No one else will dare challenge them again. All of Dwarka will be firmly within the control of Nyarlathotep once more. If he can do this, he assures himself that he will once again be in the good graces of his god. Nyarlathotep will honor him, and he will be glorified by all of Dwarka as the mouthpiece for the great serpent god. The head priest's first order of business is to gather a team of skilled mercenaries to hunt down the remaining rebels who still pose a threat to the city's stability. He reaches out to his contacts, pulling together a group of highly trained fighters with a reputation for getting the job done. The mercenaries are a rough and ready bunch, each one armed with deadly weapons and a hunger for adventure. They listen intently as the head priest outlines the mission, detailing the rebels' hiding places and providing any relevant information he has on their tactics and strengths. Despite the mercenaries' eagerness to engage the rebels, the head priest insists on caution. He knows that the rebels are dangerous and that any wrong move could result in a full-scale revolt. He urges the mercenaries to stay patient and wait for the right opportunity to strike. As the days wear on, the mercenaries grow restless, eager to put their skills to the test. But the head priest remains steadfast in his caution, refusing to engage the rebels until the time is right. And so they wait. The mercenaries spend their days training and preparing, honing their skills, and devising strategies for the coming battle. The head priest spends his time poring over reports and intelligence, searching for any patterns the rebels may have had that will lead to their annihilation. If they were able to track down and eliminate one of their operating cells, then surely finding any others that may exist will put them one step closer to killing their true enemy, Enkidu of Clan Hyalura. As the tension mounts, it becomes clear that a confrontation is inevitable. The citizens of Dwarka grow more anxious as rumors of anyone critical of the priesthood meeting their gruesome ends. What began with a handful of people meeting in secret, it advanced to organized cells plotting to kill influential members of the city and the priesthood, now teeters on the verge of all-out revolt. But for now, the head priest and his team of mercenaries bide their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If their next target does indeed include Enkidu, his guardsmen will not be enough to take down the threat. The mercenaries will be essential for getting the job done. This opportunity cannot be wasted. If Enkidu learns that trained killers are after him, not just temple guards, he may become even more cautious and elusive. Unknown to the mercenaries and the head priest, the serpent has been watching their every move, observing their preparations and plans with a cold, calculating eye. It slithers through the shadows, its movements silent and fluid. As it inspects the mercenaries and evaluates the head priest's plan, the serpent is a creature of ancient wisdom, and it can sense the head priest's desperation and fear, as well as the mercenaries' hunger for battle. It knows that this conflict could have far-reaching consequences, and is determined to ensure that the outcome is the best interests of the city and its people. For several days, the serpent watches and waits, taking in every detail of the head priest's plan, and studying the mercenaries' movements and tactics. It sees the weaknesses in their strategy and the flaws in their execution, and it takes note of the rebels' strengths and vulnerabilities. Namath is a mercenary of notorious reputation, feared throughout the land for his ruthless tactics and lack of honor. He is a skilled warrior, well versed in the art of combat, and he will do whatever it takes to achieve his objectives. When the head priest sent out his summons for assistance, Namath was one of the first to respond. He sees an opportunity to make a profit, and he is eager to take advantage of it. He arrived at the temple, his imposing figure towering over the other mercenaries, and he immediately demanded to be briefed on the mission. The head priest hesitated for a moment, sensing the danger of aligning himself with such a notorious figure, but he knew that he needed all of the help he can get, and he reluctantly agreed to let Namath join the mission. As the mission unfolded, Namath proved to be a formidable fighter, his skills honed over years of battle and conflict. He leads the team of mercenaries with a ruthless efficiency, showing no mercy to the rebels who stand in their way. But even as he fights, Namath's true motives remain shrouded in mystery. The other mercenaries sense that something is off about him, and they keep a wary eye on his movements, unsure of his loyalties. Despite his reputation for ruthlessness and lack of honor, Namath has proved himself to be a danger to all those who cross his path. A true enemy of everyone for the right price. Now that all of the opposition has been silenced, Namath wonders why his services have been called upon once more. When the head priest summons Namath to take on the dangerous mission of killing the remaining rebels, the mercenary demands more details before agreeing to undertake such a perilous task. He is not one to take unnecessary risks without knowing what he is getting into. The head priest, sensing Namath's reluctance, offers him a huge sum of money to carry out the mission. But the mercenary is not swayed by the promise of riches alone. He wants to know exactly what he is up against. The head priest hesitates for a moment, his eyes flickering nervously. Finally, he admits the truth. The guards were not equipped to handle the kind of rebellion that has erupted in the city. The rebels had been better organized and better armed than anyone had anticipated, and the priesthood had been caught off guard. The head priest had no choice but to call in outside help, and that's where Namath and the other mercenaries came in. They had the skills and the experience necessary to take on the rebels and bring the city back under the control of the priesthood. As Namath carried out his mission to eliminate the remaining rebels, he couldn't help but wonder if what he is doing is morally right. He knows that the people he is killing are those who resisted the priesthood, and he cannot help but wonder if they were justified in their rebellion. But at the same time, Namath knows that he has never turned down a job if the pay was good enough. He has made a living by taking on dangerous and often morally ambiguous missions, and he knows that his skills as a mercenary are in high demand precisely because he is willing to do what others won't. Namath tries to push his doubts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. He knows that he cannot afford to let his conscience get in the way of his work. If he hesitates even for a moment, it could mean the difference between success and failure. Namath's path to becoming a mercenary began when he was a young man. He was born into poverty and had to struggle to survive from an early age. As he grew older, he realized that the only way he could escape his circumstances was to make a name for himself. Namath was a natural fighter and quickly gained a reputation as a formidable warrior. He began taking on jobs as a hired sword, earning money by fighting in battles and serving as a bodyguard for wealthy patrons. At first, Namath still had a strong sense of morality. He would only take on jobs that he believed were justified, and that aligned with his personal code of ethics. But as he gained more experience and saw more of the world, he began to lose his moral compass. Namath realized that the world was a harsh and unforgiving place, and that people would do whatever it took to survive. He saw the corruption and cruelty of those in power, and he began to lose faith in the idea that there was such a thing as right and wrong. As he continued to take on jobs as a mercenary, Namath found himself becoming increasingly ruthless. He would do whatever it took to complete a mission, even if it meant killing innocent people or committing acts of violence that he knew were morally wrong. Over time, Namath's sense of morality eroded completely. He became a cold, calculating killer who had no qualms about taking on any job, no matter how heinous or immoral. He no longer cared about the consequences of his actions, and he knew that he was viewed as a monster by many. But even as he descended further into darkness, Namath could not help but wonder if there was a way to regain his lost morality. He knew that he could never go back to the way things were before, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still some glimmer of hope for him. Some way to redeem himself and make amends for all the horrible things he had done. As he carried out more missions over the years, Namath found himself becoming more and more ruthless. He no longer hesitated before striking down his targets, and he no longer felt any remorse for the lives he has taken. It is a dangerous path to follow, and Namath knows it, but he also knows that he has no other options. This is the life he has chosen, and he must accept the consequences of his actions, no matter how dark they may be. Namath reflects on the nature of his work. He knows that he is a necessary evil, the tool to be used by those in power to maintain their hold over the masses. But he also knows that he is one of the best at what he does, and that there will always be a demand for his services. Hearing that he did not complete the task he was paid for is insulting. He was hired to eliminate all those in Dwarka who were in open rebellion against the priesthood of Nyarlathotep. He has never failed in a mission. There is no possible way that any of the rebels escaped him. The head priest must be mistaken. "Your guards and myself were very thorough," Namath says. "I am not one who tends to overlook things. Not a single one of those rebels escaped our blades. I am positive that we cut down every single member of the resistance cells scattered across Dwarka. If anyone feels ill will towards the serpent or its priesthood, they are much too scared to say out loud or ever organize to take any action. You are now unopposed. It is then that the priest reveals that one of the rebels, Enkidu, was not present at any of the safe houses when they were raided. This brazen man attempted to storm this very temple in front of the entire city as witness, while you slew cowards, hiding in the shadows. The true threat to our faith remained at large. Namath clears his throat, standing across the room. If I may, sir, Enkidu is possibly the most skilled swordsman in the entire world. I have seen this man firsthand slay 20 men at once. Your guards will not be enough to stop him. You know him personally? Dakin asks, intrigued. How deep does this familiarity run? Not nearly as deep as your coin purse, my lord, Namath grins. I assure you. Dakin laughs. Good. But does this Enkidu trust you? Do you believe that you could lure him into a trap? If Enkidu is known for anything more than his skill in battle, it is his naivety. I can deliver him to you with ease. If you succeed in bringing Enkidu to me alive, your reward shall be most substantial. How would you like to be made captain of all of the city guard? Namath kneels, lowering his head in respect. I shall bring Enkidu before you before the sun rises tomorrow. Namath nods, taking in the information. He knows this will be no easy task, but he also knows that he is one of the best in the business. He accepts the challenge, his eyes glittering with anticipation. As Namath sets out to track down those remaining rebels, he knows that Enkidu will be his greatest test. The two of them fought side by side for months, and he knows just how dangerous the man can be. He prepares himself for the battle to come, honing his skills and sharpening his weapons. Enkidu stands in the center of the room, struck silent and motionless. Mangled bodies are littered all around them. Gallons of blood are spread across the walls, floor, and ceiling. A battle did not take place, but rather a slaughter. Anyone gathered in opposition to Nyarlathotep was met with the sword and delivered to a violent end. Come, there is nothing more that we can do for them now, Enkidu says, pulling Haida away from the home. He knows that the city guards that carried out this massacre will not be far, and hopes that more rebels will gather. There was no reason for this, Haida whispers, thinking of all the people that she used to meet with. The beasts of the wild and ghouls kill for hunger. Warring nations kill for power and conquest. Raiders kill for monetary gain. Spurned lovers kill out of jealousy, but these people were killed senselessly. They were killed because they would not bow down to worship the serpent. The less a false god is praised, the weaker its power becomes. This nightmare shall never end unless the serpent is killed and its religion is destroyed. Killing its followers shall buy us only enough time until they are replaced by more fools. I swear that I will soon crush every altar and dance on the bones of the priests of Nyarlathotep before I wring the life out of that foul worm and take its head. Stay your anger, Enkidu. Righteous anger is useful, but there is a small gap between justice and savagery. Enkidu takes a deep breath and nods, noticing his hand has been tightly gripping the handle of his sword. I must find Tarvin and make sure that he is still safe. Haida eyes him warily. He forsook your village to join in the serpent's revelry. He cannot be trusted to come with us. His will is weak, that alone does not make one evil. The people of this city have a power over the senses that makes urges difficult to overcome. Enkidu turns to look at her with a surprising smirk. Had you not been on your own path to vengeance against the serpent, I do not know if I could have controlled my own urges. You mean to kill me for assassinating those men in the alley? Her eyebrows raised cautiously. If your target had been me, I do not know if I could have overcome your seduction either. You may not believe it, but even I must fight the urges of this city. I cannot allow myself to give in to the overwhelming passion that is in the very air. Even being near you, I can hear your breath, smell your sweat, feel your heat. He stops, finding himself embarrassed for saying too much. Ida is about to speak, but finds it best to change the subject and not push any further. Recovering your friend will mean sending us directly back into the heart of the serpent's dominion. You recall how great his power was around the temple, do you not? I do, but I also know what to expect this time. They will not overpower me again. And what of aiding your village? Have you given up on this task completely? It is too late for me to be able to help Katal to cook directly, Enkidu says with sadness. I have become far too notable with the priesthood of Nyarlathotep and those with power in this city. I must put my faith in Lianlum, and that she has succeeded in her own task. Who? Haida asks, confused. I apologize, Enkidu says. To protect her, I kept secret from everyone in Dwarka that I actually came here with 2 young companions. Tarvin and I petitioned aid from the city leadership. Lianlum was our contingency plan. If we failed, she was to steal what we need from Dwarka's food stores. Haida is surprised by this scheme. Such a plan seems beneath a man of such high moral standing and honor as Enkidu. She decides that she does not really know the man all that well and should remember this. How was she to know if your efforts were unsuccessful? We were to meet up regularly and check in with each other. I have missed several of those meetings while we have been on the run from the city guard. Lianlum must know that Kataltakuk's hopes lie with her now. After leaving the home, Enkidu sets it ablaze and utters a small prayer for the brave souls who refuse to bow to the serpent. Flames attract the attention of several guardsmen, and soon a contingent of 4 Dwarka guards are upon them. It is the blasphemous witch and the foreigner again, the guard says, drawing his curved sword. Both of you have been ordered dead. Enkidu draws Tiavan, the angelic blade of the Yazata, given to his ancestor many years ago, passed down through his descendants. The light reflected off the blade is blinding, and the guards are forced to shield their eyes briefly. In that moment, Enkidu is already moving against them like a blur. Yazatan-crafted diamond and crystal strikes fast and true, filling the air with the coppery scent of blood. All 4 men lie dead on the street before any could even counterattack. Enkidu flings the blood from his weapon and wipes the blade across the back of one of his fallen enemies, before sheathing it. Your speed and swordplay never cease to amaze me, Haida whispers, having seen nothing of his fast motions beyond the fuzzy and blurred shape of a man. I firmly believe that God has put his strength upon you to carry out his will in this world. I would not dare to claim such things that I do not know for certain. The Creator has blessed many times, but I do not dare to say that he works through me. I'm a flawed man. My actions are confusing and sometimes utterly wrong. All I can do is what I believe to be correct, and pray for wisdom and insight. Haida nods. If we are to assault the temple, we are going to need more than wisdom. The priests will be numerous, and their numbers could overwhelm even your impressive sword abilities. I shall march up the steps of the temple without fear, cut each follower of the serpent down. Stubborn man, that will not work. You are like an ass in your stubborn ways. We must attack the priesthood with subtle infiltration. Assassination is called for, not open frontal assault. 2 cannot wage war against 1,000. Do you not recall how many guards the head priest was able to summon to him In just a short time, we cannot attack them so directly. We must approach this from the shadows and strike without mercy. You attack as an assassin if you must. I shall cut my own way through the entire city of Dwarka, should they stand against me, Enkidu says before running off, headed for the temple alone. Fool! Haida screams in frustration. You will die! Deep below the city in the heart of the earth, an evil as ancient as the very first man sleeps in dreamless slumber, shackled with the strongest of Yazatan magic. No spell that has ever been created in the entire universe had as much time and effort put into its casting. Hundreds of Yazata died to buy the heirloom sages the precious minutes to cast the 8 barrier spells locking the very essence of sin away from the rest of creation. The atrocities committed in Dwarka in the name of the serpent Nyarlathotep drawn the unconscious attention of the beast known as the Magog. The slaughter of the innocent and the murder that is done in the name of a false god quickens the deterioration of the chains, binding the destructive force of the Magog. Created as the container to hold mankind's absolved sins, no one could ever have imagined in their worst-case scenarios that mankind would exceed the capacity of the Magog with their evil deeds. The first of the 8 seals begin to weaken during the rise of the priesthood of Nyarlathotep. Now, 3 generations later, the celebrations of Diamanaga and the murders of the resistance groups spread across the city, and the human sacrifices brought before the serpent have stirred the Magog to awaken and broken the 6th barrier spell completely. The 7th barrier shakes, growing thinner by the second as more and more sin floods into the already full container. Dakan kneels before the blood-stained altar of Nyarlathotep. Behind him, the numerous priests and priestesses remain engaged in their orgy of worship. Enkidu approaches my temple, the great serpent hisses from his pit. This time, do not allow him to escape. My God, he is a difficult man to kill, Dakan pleads. Not even the Sakari were able to take his head. I do not have need for your excuses. The blood of Enkidu is all that I now desire. He has insulted me at every turn, and increased the dissension in this city against my faith. Nyarlathotep's massive black head rises from the pit to look his head priest in the eyes. The serpent's head is as large as the body of at least 2 men, and each eye is easily the size of a warrior's shield. Dark scales so black that they are only visible when light is reflected off of them allow the serpent to move through the shadows of the city's subterranean tunnels unseen. When the serpent opens its jaws to speak, a mouthful of fangs, each as long as a sword and sharper than a spear, become visible. Dwarka is my city, Nyarlathotep hisses. Her people are my servants to do with what I please. No outsider is going to come here and raise my servants to rebel against me. I will make an example of Enkidu. His head will be displayed at the entrance of Dwarka, for all to see as a reminder to who this city belongs to. Dakan nods, refusing to look up and risk the anger of his god. He will not escape again. Every soldier of Dwarka and all of the hired swords will be called upon to defend this temple. Do not fail. The serpent's tongue extends, wrapping around the priest's throat and pulling him up against the creature's jaws. Saliva drips from the serpent's mouth, and its hot breath makes the head priest want to vomit. It would not pain me to devour this priesthood and start anew. Perhaps I should do this anyway, just to be sure. Maybe purging my following of failure is the only option. Please, my lord, Give me the chance to deliver the lifeless body of Enkidu before your altar. Nyarlathotep releases Dakan, begins to withdraw back into the depths. This is your last chance, human. Dakan sits on the floor, rubbing his throat. Thick sweat covers the man's body, and his face is white with terror. Even the others within the temple have paused in their acts to watch their god in his anger. Bring forth every warrior in Dwarka to bear upon this man Enkidu. Dakan growls, his pride injured worse than his neck. There will be no further joy or celebrations until this blasphemer is dead. Enkidu must die tonight. With the head priest's call to action, every city guard and warrior within the city quickly mobilizes to hunt down the final rebel who stands against the faith of the serpent. The streets are filled with the sounds of clanging swords and the thud of heavy footsteps as the search begins in earnest. The head priest himself leads the charge, his eyes filled with a fierce determination to stamp out any remaining resistance to the serpent's rule. He knows that this final rebel is a dangerous foe, and he is determined to bring him to justice, no matter what it takes. As the search continues, the guards and warriors work together to cover every inch of the city. They search every alleyway and building, turning over every stone in their pursuit of the rebel. They know that time is running out, and they must act quickly if they are to succeed. The celebrations within the city have already been disrupted, and public satisfaction is declining. Dwarka's opinion of the priesthood and their faith is becoming impacted by their failure to end this rebellion. The longer their enemies remain, the more their message spreads. More people will join their cause and stand in opposition to the faith if they do not find them all soon and wipe them out. An example must be made in blood for all of Dwarka to see. For Namath, the search is just another job. He moves through the city with a calm, almost detached efficiency, set on taking out any rebels that cross his path. But none appear. They were thorough. All opposition to the serpent was eliminated, with the massacres of the resistance cells. Only his old acquaintance Enkidu remains, and this mission will not end until he is dead. He knows that this is what he was hired to do, and he does it without question, but as the hours tick by and Enkidu remains elusive, Namath begins to feel a growing sense of frustration. He knows that time is running out, and he begins to worry that he might fail in his mission. Despite his growing doubts, Namath continues to push forward, determined to do whatever it takes to complete his job. He knows that there is no turning back now, and that he must see this through to the bitter end no matter what the cost. The body of a Dwarka guard falls to the street, the clean incision of Yazatan diamond left upon his breast. Enkidu turns, Tiavon biting through the shoulder of another man and cleaving his body nearly in two. Scattered around them, half a dozen other guards lie in thick pools of dark blood. Many of their limbs lie in places away from them. Having ceased hiding, Enkidu fights in the open, taking down any who come against him in his path towards the temple. "Murderer!" citizens shout, throwing stones at Enkidu. "Your devotion to the serpent is your demise, not my sword. Cease your evil and turn away from Nyarlathotep," Enkidu pleads to deaf ears of the city. More guards approach, and with a sigh of deep sadness, Enkidu raises his blade to the ready. The men rush him, but they are no match for the warrior's speed or skill. Even with the lingering pain of his previous injuries, each man who challenges Enkidu is felled with ease. "You will bring disaster to Dwarka," a man says, holding a bleeding arm. He struggles to maintain his grip on his sword. "If we do not kill you, the great serpent will turn his wrath upon this city." "Not if I take his head. Please, I am not the enemy of Dwarka. I seek to liberate this city from the evil of Nyarlathotep. Turn your swords away from me, and towards the real threat to Dwarka. You are strong. There is no doubt in this. However, I fear a god more than I fear your strength. The serpent is no god. Please, I beg of you to end your exaltation of this hateful worm. Nyarlathotep chokes the life of Dwarka, and drinks upon a people as a tick would. Ignoring Enkidu's pleas, the man lunges with another heavy sigh. The warrior priest cuts him down. Will no one choose good over evil in this city anymore? The serpent's influence is too strong. There's no hope left for Dwarka to be saved. Enkidu continues towards the temple, determined to end the serpent once and for all. As the search continues, Namath and the other warriors begin to grow tired and restless. They have been searching for hours, and the rebel still eludes them. The head priest is becoming increasingly agitated, and tensions are running high. Suddenly, a shout echoes through the streets. One of the guards has spotted the rebel, and the warriors spring into action, racing towards the scene of the sighting. Namath is in the lead, his sword drawn and ready for battle. He knows that this is the moment he has been waiting for, the moment when he can finally complete his job and earn his pay. As they round the corner, they see the rebel standing in the middle of the street, their sword at ready. Namath charges forward, his sword raised high, ready to strike. The rebel is quick, and their swordsmanship is impressive. Namath finds himself on the defensive, his sword clashing against theirs in a shower of sparks. The fight is fierce, and for a moment it seems as though the rebel might actually win. But Namath is a skilled warrior, and he knows how to find weaknesses in his opponent's defenses. With a quick feint, he distracts the rebel, and in a flash of steel his sword finds its mark. The rebel falls to the ground, defeated. Namath stands over them, his sword still raised high. He feels a sense of satisfaction wash over him, knowing that he has completed his job successfully. But as he looks down at the fallen rebel, something stirs within him. For the first time, he begins to question the morality of what he has done. Is it really right to kill someone simply because they resist the faith of the serpent? At one time, he actually considered Enkidu his friend. Has he really become a man that will kill even his own friends for the right price? As he looks down in reflection, he notices that the face staring back up at him is not that of Enkidu. He has never seen this man before. The head priest approaches, his face twisted in a triumphant grin. Namath feels a growing sense of disgust, realizing that he has just helped to further the priest's agenda. Is that him? The head priest asks. Namath shakes his head. No, I do not know who this man is. The head priest is shocked. What? How is that possible? I thought you had already eliminated all of the other rebels. I had, Namath says, but your call to take up arms against Enkidu and all the other men and women who opposed your militant faith has stirred an even greater uprising within the city. Those who were not rebels before have taken to the streets to defend the freedom to worship their own gods in Dwarka. Then they too will die, the priest screams. Everyone who stands in defiance of us must be eliminated. He sheathes his sword and turns to walk away, knowing that he can no longer be a part of this. As he disappears into the crowd, he wonders what kind of person he has become, and what the future holds for him. He has never stopped to question the morality of his actions before now, but seeing these people fighting for freedom from religious oppression causes him to be able to only look at the priests with revulsion. These men are not men of any faith that should be tolerated. His greed is actively allowing for the spread of oppression. Namath can no longer see himself as someone who is independent from these ideological wars. He chose which side he's aligned himself with by taking payment for his services. Because of this, he sees himself just as evil as the priests themselves. Haida keeps to the alleys and shadows completely opposite Enkidu's approach. She has shed her tunic and is bare down to the waist, wearing only a simple short skirt that does not cover the entirety of her buttocks. She has used her dagger to cut her hair shorter and reddened her bronzed skin with leftover powders and oils from the apothecary shop. Since meeting Enkidu, Haida now feels shame in returning to her previous tactics, but knows them to be essential to toppling the priesthood of Nyarlathotep. A man grabs her from behind, cupping her breasts and reaching beneath her skirt. She winces, biting her bottom lip and resists the compulsion to reach for her dagger concealed in the waistband of her clothing. I cannot act against him in case there is someone looking, Haida thinks, trying to prevent herself from stabbing the molester. She tries to twist around and look back, but he grabs her by the throat. "Do you really care who I am, slut?" the man asks with disdain. "If you do not mind trying to enjoy the remainder of the night without your manhood, I do care," she replies, drawing her dagger and holding it back against the base of his shaft. The man laughs, withdrawing himself and allowing her to turn around and face him. Haida is relieved to recognize the man as a member of the priesthood of Nyarlathotep. "Take me in the temple, in the presence of God, so that I may be blessed with a future priest," Haida says, prepared to do whatever it will take to bring down the followers of the serpent. The honor of fathering a priest to their god is second to none. "I did this and so much more, many times in the past," Haida thinks with shame. "So why do I feel like I am committing some great sin? Are my feelings for Enkidu causing me this shame?" She tries to push aside her thoughts and focus only on reaching the temple. "My name is Makeda," the priest says as they near the temple. "If that too is of interest to you." Haida looks back with a smile. "I will name the son born of our union Makedon, son of Makeda, in your honor." They enter the temple, and Makeda takes the lead, more familiar with the surroundings. He brings her to the central chamber where the other priests and priestesses continue their celebratory orgies. Only Dakin abstains, pacing around the altar, nervously awaiting news of Enkidu's demise. "I have to get close enough to the altar to kill the head priest," Haida thinks. Makeda takes her in his arms and carries her towards the steps opposite Dakin. "No," Haida whispers. "Take me at the base of the altar. The serpent's power will invigorate you and increase our chances of conception." Makeda nods and brings her to the base of the altar, within reach of both Dakin and the sacrificial pit. He lies Haida on her back and straddles her waist. She tries not to panic as her movement is restricted. "Dakin, this one is exceedingly devout," Makeda says. "Please join us and bless our union." "Damn it! You will recognize me for sure," Haida thinks in panic. "The devout must always be encouraged," Dakin says, removing his own robe. "Enter her now, my brother." "I have no choice." Haida begins to panic even more. Either I give in to their lusts, or I strike and pray that I can kill both of them on my own. Haida's fingers close around the handle of her dagger at the same time that Makeda enters her from below and her mouth opens to scream. The head priest inserts himself into her open mouth, laughing as she is unable to resist him. "Do not even think about it, whore," Dakin laughs. "Did you think that I would not recognize you?" He brings his knees down on her shoulders and pins her in place. Haida coughs, unable to breathe. "What's going on?" Makeda asks in surprise, leaping to his feet. Haida throws her legs back over her head, kicking Dakin and knocking him against the steps. She scrambles to her feet, still coughing. "Thank you for bringing this one to me, Makeda. We have been searching for her and her companion." Dakin smiles. "You have saved me a lot of time hunting her down." "She is one of the rebels?" Makeda whispers. I'm sorry, I had no idea." Dakin smiles, holding up a hand. "It is quite all right. You have done a great service for our god in bringing this whore here to us as a sacrifice. Her death will bring us one step closer to ending the insurrection against our faith. Soon, all of Dwarka will be united under the great Nyarlathotep. All who oppose his might will be devoured." A single blow to the back of the head by a Dwarka guard drops Haida to the floor, where she is enveloped by darkness, and her thoughts become silent. Enkidu walks up the steps of the Temple of Nyarlathotep. Immediately the man is set upon by Dwarka guards. Prodding him with their spears, the guards attempt to usher the warrior inside. Pivoting, Enkidu slashes through the simple wooden spears and whips his sword across their chests with amazing speed. Blood flashes into the air and runs down the steps into the street. Confidently, the warrior enters the temple alone. Below, followers of the serpent scream and run in terror as the bodies of the guards bleed out on the temple steps. The entrance to the temple is blocked behind Enkidu by the spears of over 50 city guards. The whole of the steps are covered by the men, and the street is cleared, in preparation of a large, violent battle. Throwing his shoulder into the nearest pillar, Enkidu brings stone raining down upon the entrance. Many men are crushed, and the others are prevented from following their foe inside. "You are trapped, foreigner," a guard shouts. "You will face our god, and you will be unable to flee. The great serpent will devour you and defecate your bones." Enkidu laughs at their taunts. "Your god is a pathetic worm that I will behead for all of Dwarka to bear witness to. All will come before your god's head and say, 'Look, here is the great god of Dwarka.' I will end your vile ways and stop the spread of your poison." Just as the guards are about to advance, Nemeth appears to cut the men off with a quick slash. The guards leap away, putting distance between them and the two former adventurers. "You seem to be outnumbered, Enkidu." "Nothing that I cannot handle," Enkidu grins. He is relieved that his former companion is not blinded by the evils of Dwarka, like so many others. He moves back to back with Nemeth as the temple guards begin to encircle them. "Thank you, my friend. You are truly supporting a just cause. The priesthood of Dwarka is corrupt. Their worship of the serpent brings nothing but death and suffering." "I'm sorry, Enkidu." "I truly am," Nemeth whispers. Before Enkidu can react, he feels the cold steel of Nemeth's blade piercing his back. "I hold no ill will towards you personally. But you know me. When have I ever been a man of virtue? We adventured together, slaying pirates and marauders, and liberating maidens of their modesty. You may have changed, but I have not. I have no delusions of being a heroic warrior." "Nemeth," Enkidu coughs, blood drooling from his lip. "I understand, but I am still going to kill you." Nemeth laughs. "You are entitled to that, but I am not going to give you that chance. I was paid handsomely to hand you over to Dakin. Wealth is the only thing that holds my loyalty. I hold no illusions that Dakin or any of the other priests are good men, but your crusade against them was never my fight. They hired me to do a job, and I never failed to finish a job that I have taken." Enkidu desperately tries to fight through the other guards, but his swings are sluggish and do not connect. Wounded so severely, even the weaker men are able to score glancing hits against the seasoned warrior. Soon, Enkidu is driven to a knee. Barely conscious, he holds out Tiavon to challenge any who dare and try to come closer. "Give up," Nemeth says, taking pity on his former companion. He is easily able to slap the angelic sword from Enkidu's grasp. "You have been defeated." Without further resistance, he is dragged before Dakin and the other priests in the temple's main chamber hall. Waiting for him, the priests of Nyarlathotep are gathered in their gold and finest robes. Slaves coil around the legs of the priests and do not relent in their lusts, even now. "Welcome again, Enkidu," Dakin, the high priest, says. He stands alone behind the altar and the large golden image of the serpent god. "Say what you have to say and make your peace," Enkidu coughs, glaring at the priests. "I will not spare a single one of you." Despite being barely awake and deathly pale from blood loss, Enkidu remains defiant. He does not even have the strength to stand. 2 guards hold him under his arms to keep him upright. More guards fill the hall from 2 side chambers and surround Enkidu. In all, 30 more men stand opposed to the warrior. Balling his fists tightly, his eyes scan the room. He looks his opponents over for weaknesses, as well as documenting the area for space and maneuverability. He intends to die fighting, Dakin laughs. He is ignorantly one-minded. Enkidu catches sight of Namath entering the chamber with more guards. He curses, knowing his chances of victory are highly decreased if he must battle against a man such as his former companion. So, you would choose money over honor? Namath shrugs, drawing his sword. One cannot eat honor. All of your efforts have been meaningless, Enkidu of Kataltakuk, Dakin laughs. Not only shall you and your horde die here today, but so too shall all of the inhabitants of your filthy village. You came to this city to beg for aid, to help your home after the ravages of war. But I promise you now, I shall invest twice the amount you sought towards sellswords, to burn down every remaining structure in Kataltakuk, and slaughter each man, woman, and child left alive. Not even your livestock shall my men spare. Enkidu tenses, trying to resist the guards. He is still too weak. Stay away from them, he pleads. They did nothing wrong. They put their hopes in you. Is that failure enough? They erred the moment they did not dash you against a rock as a wailing infant. The final doom of your home lies solely at your feet, Enkidu. Namath swallows hard, taken aback by the ruthless threats of the priest. He may have committed many heinous acts over the years in his pursuit of wealth and opportunity, but never once did the man slay innocent women or children. He has only killed those that he was paid to kill. Dakin is taking things too far. Not only have I betrayed Enkidu through my greed, I have killed his entire village. He's too injured to fight back, even if I were to side with him in battle. Namath lowers his head in shame. I'm sorry, Enkidu, but I cannot throw my life away to save you or your people. There is no way the two of us could take them all on in your condition. The air is thick with tension as an angry mob converges on the temple, their voices raised in a deafening roar of protest. The sound echoes through the city streets, drawing more and more people to the cause. No longer able to worship as they please due to the priests of Nyarlathotep's corruption and violence, the people of Dwarka that do not adhere to the faith of the serpent rise up in open rebellion. Once Dwarka was a hub of all lands and faiths, with people coming to the city from all over the world, and bringing with them their culture and their gods. The greed and zealousy of the priests of Nyarlathotep have destroyed that freedom and corrupted Dwarka's greatest allure. The head priest hears the commotion outside and rushes to the window, his heart pounding in his chest. He sees the villagers gathering below, their faces twisted in anger and frustration. He knows that something must be done to quell the unrest, but he also knows that it may already be too late. The people have grown tired of the priesthood's oppression and are now demanding change. In attempting to quell rebellion, his actions have only fanned the flames to greater intensity. The rebels that he had killed have become martyrs for a free Dwarka, and for once, he and his priesthood are cornered, with only the city guard and his hired swords to protect him. Dakin begins to panic. The head priest turns to his guardsmen, his face grim. "Ready yourselves for battle," he commands. "We cannot allow these rebels to disrupt the peace of our city." "Rebels?" one of the guards whispers, unsure. "Those are just the people of Dwarka. Those are our neighbors. These are not foreign invaders. They are blasphemers that seek to destroy all that we have built here in this city. They must be crushed now before their evil spreads." The guardsmen nod in agreement, their weapons at the ready. They know that the coming fight will be brutal and deadly. But they also know that it is their duty to protect the faith of the serpent at all costs. As the villagers grow closer, the tension in the air becomes almost palpable. The head priest takes a deep breath and steps out into the balcony, his voice ringing out over the crowd. "Cease this violence at once," he commands. "You will not be allowed to disturb the peace of our city any longer." "Dwarka is no longer your city, priest," a villager shouts. "Dwarka belongs to the people now." This city belongs to Nyarlathotep, Dakin screams, enraged at their insults. Have you forgotten all that he has done for you? For the city? Dwarka would be nothing without his blessings. The villagers respond with a deafening roar, their weapons raised in defiance. The head priest knows that there is no turning back now. The battle lines have been drawn, and it is only a matter of time before the first blows are struck. As the citizens rise up in anger, chaos erupts throughout the city. The head priest orders his guardsmen to defend the temple, but the angry mob is too strong. The villagers swarm through the temple gates, overwhelming the guards and priests who stand in their way. The battle is fierce, with swords clashing and blood staining the temple walls. The sound of angry voices fills the air as the villagers gather outside the temple gates, wielding swords and makeshift weapons. They are determined to put an end to the oppression that has plagued their city for too long. The head priest watches from his window, his face twisted in rage and fear. He knows that he has made a grave mistake in resorting to violence to spread his faith, but he cannot back down now. He orders his guardsmen to defend the temple, but they are vastly outnumbered by the angry mob. The villagers surge forward, their weapons flashing in the sunlight, as they charge towards the temple gates. The guardsmen fight violently, but they are quickly overwhelmed by the sheer force of the mob. The clash of swords and the screams of the wounded fill the air, creating a scene of chaos and confusion. As the fighting rages on, the villagers begin to gain the upper hand. They push forward, breaking through the temple gates and storming into the sacred halls. The head priest watches in horror as the angry mob descends upon his priests and acolytes, striking them down with brutal efficiency. He knows that his time is running out, but he refuses to give up without a fight. He gathers the remaining guardsmen and leads a last-ditch effort to defend the temple. Meanwhile, the warriors Enkidu and Namath continue to fight against the mercenaries and priests within the temple interior. With Dakin and the others distracted, the men are able to push back against the superior numbers of their enemy. No, Dakin whispers, watching as flames spread across the city, and altars for Nyarlathotep are torn asunder. The mob continues to spread throughout the temple complex, wreaking havoc and slaying many of the serpent's faithful. Everything is falling apart. There must be something I can do to put an end to this. If only I could have killed that bastard Enkidu before any of this happened. It's all his fault. Sacrifice, Nyarlathotep hisses, his voice echoing upward through the holes in the stone floor meant for the drainage of blood. I demand sacrifice. The ground suddenly quakes, causing Enkidu and the guards around him to stumble. Beneath them, the serpent Nyarlathotep approaches the sacrificial pit. Dakin calls several servants over, each holding a prisoner tightly. Enkidu grinds his teeth together in fury, desperately wanting to get his hands on the high priest. Dakin smiles, cupping the chin of the first prisoner. The sacrifice is a dark-skinned girl the same age and relative build as Haida. She recoils from the priest's touch. Are you frightened, child? Dakin asks. Under his feet, Nyarlathotep shifts impatiently. Red eyes stare up from the darkness of the pit. Please, the girl begs. I just wish to return home. Sliding his blade across her throat, Dakin smiles as he looks into her terrified eyes. That will not be happening. With a gentle push, he sends the dying girl down into the serpent's waiting jaws. The slave's death causes another tremor as Nyarlathotep excitedly moves about below. Seizing the moment, Enkidu shoves the guards holding him forward and steals one of their swords. With one deft swing, Enkidu cuts both men down and launches himself forward, clashing with the nearest Dwarka guards. A spear bites into his side, but he continues on, cleaving arm and leg and taking many heads. Blood pours down the drain into the pit, driving the serpent into a frenzy. A guard attacks from the left, and Enkidu sidesteps, chopping the man at the forearm and shattering his bones. As the man screams, Enkidu pivots and thrusts the stolen sword through his back. Two more guards attack from the rear, and Enkidu drops low, kicking their legs out from underneath them. The mob surges forward, their weapons glinting in the sunlight as they storm the temple gates. The head priest's guardsmen rush to meet them, their swords and shields at the ready. The clash of steel echoes through the streets as the two sides collide, their battle cries filling the air. The villagers fight with a fierce determination, their anger driving their strength. Some of the guardsmen, caught up in the fervor of the moment, turn against the priests and join the mob in their fight. They too have grown tired of the priesthood's oppressive ways and are ready for change. The head priest watches in horror as his once loyal guardsmen turn against him. He realizes the situation has spiraled out of control, and that he may not be able to salvage the situation. Despite the odds stacked against them, the head priest and his remaining followers fight on, determined to defend their faith at all costs. But the villagers are relentless, and their sheer numbers soon overwhelm the defenders. The battle rages on for what seems like hours, and the mob manages to take control of the temple complex. Only the temple Anagashop, where they currently reside, is yet to be taken. The villagers swarm the steps, kept out only by the strong temple doors and the rubble brought down by Enkidu. Dakin knows that the doors will not keep the mob out for long. The head priest watches in despair as the villagers desecrate the holy grounds of his temples, tearing down the sacred statues and burning the holy texts. He knows that the faith of the serpent has been irreparably damaged, and that it may never be able to recover from this devastating blow. Without Nyarlathotep's blessing and power, this rebellion will not be stopped. This is getting us nowhere, Dakin sighs as more and more guards fall. God demands more sacrifices. Our faith is being tested. We must not waver in our beliefs. We must honor Nyarlathotep. We must please him with more sacrifices. He calls over the next victim, causing Enkidu to freeze in horror. You cannot, Enkidu whispers in disbelief. A small child no older than 5 is brought forward by the next slave. Behind him, Enkidu notices that Haida is also being held as a sacrificial offering. Stop this evil now! The serpent's voice bellows from the pit, driving its followers to their knees in exultation. Do not stop. Give me all of your offerings, or suffer my wrath upon this city. Enkidu turns, cutting through the torso of another guard, and makes a second run towards the altar. He stumbles, a sword tearing through his lower back. Enkidu ignores the pain, screaming and reaching out for the altar. The priests and remaining guards fall upon him, beating the warrior mercilessly. All praise to the god of Dwarka! All praise to the great serpent Nyarlathotep! Dakin shouts, raising his knife to the child's sacrifice. Nemeth trembles in disbelief and horror as Dakin's blade touches the innocent child's flesh. The man's hands become white as he grips his sword as tightly as if he were to crush stone with them. Red flashes of fury cross his vision each time he blinks and sees the evil that Dakin now threatens to commit. No, Nemeth whispers. This cannot be happening. Not even he is capable of such atrocities. Drawing lines of morality in the presence of a being beyond all such conceptions is insulting, says with disgust. To Nyarlathotep, there's no distinction between the sacrifices of a slave or a child. It is the faith behind the priest offering the sacrifice that matters, not the body being delivered. No, I'm pretty damn sure there's a big damn distinction, Nemeth growls. And you are crossing that fucking line really clearly. I will not hesitate to sacrifice every single soul in this city, if it is to glorify my God. Nyarlathotep is what matters, not our pathetic lives. Then why do you not just toss yourself down that pit? Nemeth challenges. Dakin laughs smugly. I am the only person with any true faith in this city. Nyarlathotep needs me. I cannot die, for I am the one chosen to spread his faith across the entire world. Dwarka may be lost and must suffer destruction, but there will be other cities. I shall not stop until all of them are brought beneath the great serpent's authority. "Stop it, you bastard!" Enkidu screams, reaching out from beneath the tangle of guards holding him down. "No more! This is your fault, Enkidu. You have brought ruin to Dwarka. We were living in peace until you came here and tore it all down. Look outside at the chaos and destruction you have created." "You are mad," Enkidu growls with hatred. "The people of Dwarka are rising up against your oppression and your evil." Dakin laughs, slashing open the child's throat. A geyser of crimson erupts into the air. "Everywhere you go, death follows. Was destroying your own city not enough for you, that you had to come here and destroy Dwarka to satisfy your own bloodlusts?" "My bloodlusts? You're the one murdering innocent children." "The time for talking has ended," Dakin growls. "Now you must all face the judgment of Nyarlathotep." Time seems to stop. Even the other priests and guards are surprised by Dakin's desperation. There are many religions across the world that partake in child sacrifice, but Dwarka has never been a place where that is encouraged. It is true that from time to time offerings are made to the gods regardless of age, but never so violently. Not here. Not in a city that most of its inhabitants would consider the most civilized and progressive city in the entire world. The entire temple complex quakes violently as the smell of this newest sacrifice reaches the nostrils of the serpent. The purity and raw power of the child's blood is beyond anything that Nyarlathotep can resist, and he is thrown immediately into a violent, yet somehow euphoric dance of thrashing and whipping about below. The temple itself begins to collapse as its integrity is compromised. "Do you feel that?" Dakin shouts, raising his knife up into the air. "God is pleased. He has accepted our sacrifice. Now Dwarka will be saved from these blasphemers." "True faith demands sacrifice. A warrior priest, such as yourself, should know this, Enkidu." Enkidu shakes in anger, still held down by the city guards and temple priests. Were he not already severely fatigued and injured from his previous battles, Enkidu would easily be able to overcome their slackened grips. None of the men holding Enkidu are left with their full conviction after witnessing the horror of the head priest's actions. Their own faith in Nyarlathotep has been shaken. If the serpent really does demand such sacrifices, do they truly wish to serve such a monster? The sky darkens and the sun disappears suddenly. Even the crowds of Dwarkan citizens gathered within the temple complex pause in surprise of the mysterious occurrence. It should still be high noon, and there are no clouds anywhere to be seen overhead. The cold chill spreads throughout the city, and ghostly howls echo from all the dark places. The fires spreading across the altars and temples are all blown out in the same instant, from a sudden wind that rises up from the ground below. The earth begins to split, more of the supernatural breeze leaking out, followed by a thick malice that catches in everyone's throats. The evil is suffocating. The city is engulfed by it. Dakin continues to laugh in triumph, going mad with his devotion. "Yes, I can see it now. That is the path. Dwarka rejected God, and now I will offer the entire city as a proper tribute. Nyarlathotep will gorge himself upon the flesh and blood of all the blasphemers that failed in their faith the moment it was tested. None of them were worthy of God's blessings."